In criminal law, you can't be arrested for just thinking about committing a crime. You actually have to do something. But what does that even mean? What counts as a criminal act? Well, today we're going to break down this huge legal concept called the guilty act, or actus reus. It's literally the foundation of almost every single criminal case.
So let's just dive right in with a question that I think really gets to the heart of it all. We all kind of know, right, that murder is way more serious than manslaughter. But have you ever stopped to ask why? I mean, in both cases, tragically, someone has died. The answer, and it's a fascinating one, is all in the details of the act itself.
Or how about this one? How can someone be found guilty of attempted murder if nobody actually got hurt? It seems a little weird, doesn't it? But what this tells us is that the law is looking at something much deeper than just the final outcome.
So to really answer these questions, we can't just rely on our gut feelings. The law actually gives us a framework. You can almost think of it like a recipe for a crime.
Okay, so here it is, the legal recipe for criminal liability. For a prosecutor to prove a crime happened, they usually need to show three key ingredients. First, the actus reus, which is the guilty act. Second, the mens rea, the guilty mind. And third, that there's no valid defense. Now, for this explainer, we're going to focus in on that very first, absolutely crucial ingredient, the physical act.
All right, let's do it. Let's talk about the guilty act. This is the physical part of a crime, you guys. It's the foundation that everything else is built on.
So, what exactly is actus reus? Well, put simply, it's all the external stuff. It's everything that happened on the outside, totally separate from what was going on inside a person's head.
And look, actus reus isn't just one simple thing. It's actually made up of three parts. You have the act itself, that's the physical action or even inaction. Then you have the circumstances, the whole context of what was going on. And finally, for a lot of crimes, you have the result, the outcome that was caused by the act.
This is actually a really helpful way to think about different types of crimes. On one hand, you've got what are called conduct crimes. This is where the act itself is illegal. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. A perfect example is dangerous driving. Just doing it is the crime. But then on the other hand, you have result crimes. And here, it's all about the outcome. So causing death by dangerous driving, that's a result crime. The illegal part isn't just the driving, it's the tragic result that followed.
Okay, and this is a really important point. A core principle, really. For something to count as a criminal act, it has to be voluntary. The law generally isn't going to punish you for things you literally can't control, like, say, a muscle spasm or a reflex action. You have to be in conscious control of what you're doing.
So we've been talking a lot about things people do. But what about the things they don't do? What about when someone fails to act? Now, this is where things get super interesting. Can doing absolutely nothing actually be a crime?
Okay, get ready for this because it might shock you. The general rule in the law is that you can't be punished for failing to act. There's no general duty to rescue. That means, legally speaking, you could see someone drowning and just walk away. It sounds harsh, but the idea comes from individual liberty. The law is there to tell you what you can't do, not what you have to do.
But, and that is a huge but, there are some really, really important exceptions. There are definitely times when the law says you must act.
So, when does this duty kick in? Well, the law is pretty specific. It can come from a special relationship, think parent and child. It can happen if you voluntarily decide to care for someone. A contract can create a duty, like a lifeguard who's paid to watch the pool. Sometimes, a specific law, a statute, says you have to act. And then there's the big one, if you're the one who created the dangerous situation in the first place.
This whole idea is perfectly summed up in a famous case called R.V. Miller. So, what happened was, a guy fell asleep with a lit cigarette and it set his mattress on fire. But instead of, putting it out or calling for help, he just got up and moved to another room. And the court said, nope, you're liable. Why? Because he created the danger. And by doing that, he created a duty for himself to do something about it. His failure to do anything, that was the guilty act.
All right, let's step back for a second and put all these pieces together. We've talked about acts, about not acting, and about different kinds of crimes. But why does all this detail matter so much?
Well, let's go back to those three building blocks we mentioned earlier. Remember? The act, the circumstances, and the result. The way these three things interact with each other, well, that's everything.
And to show you just how powerful this is, let's look at an example. I want you to see how changing just one of those elements, the circumstance, can take something that is completely legal and turn it into one of the most serious crimes there is.
So look at this. The physical act is sexual intercourse. The key circumstance here is that there is consent. The result, a lawful act. But now let's change just one thing. We take away that single circumstance. We remove the consent. The physical act is identical, but now it's the crime of rape. I mean, this is such a powerful example of how circumstances aren't just minor details. They can be the very thing that defines whether a crime has been committed at all. So as you can see, this guilty act, the actus reus, is this really complex and absolutely essential piece of the puzzle. It's about what you did or what you failed to do, all within a specific context that led to a specific result. But here's the thing. Understanding this physical, external part, that's only half the story.
We've spent all this time exploring the physical act, but what was going on inside the person's head? What were they thinking? What was their intention? Because to really get a conviction, you usually need more than just the guilty act. You also need the guilty mind. And that is exactly where we're headed next.